gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe. Here in this great hall of justice are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Superman, Batman and Robin, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and the Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina, with their space monkey, Bleak. Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
Okay, I've been blabbering. Go.
Well, for me, some of my favorites, I mean, Stan Lee, of course. Obviously I didn't read his work during his initial run. It was essentially like repeats thanks to the Marvel Unlimited app. Thanks to, I think, Marvel's probably the better of the two companies in terms of releasing older material for fans to catch up on. DC is getting better. They do have their 75th anniversary collections that you can get of their various characters. But, Stan Lee's definitely one of them. The Art of Kirby, Ditko, of course. The modern writers, I would say my favorite right now would be G. Willow Wilson for Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
I forget I got the Marvel Unlimited app up right now, so I'll talk while I'm looking it up. But, the Miss Marvel series overall, in my opinion, apart from Miles Morales' Spider-Man, Kamala Khan is one of the best characters that Marvel's brought out within the last 20 years, I think.
Yeah. And it's really cool because with the Unlimited universe colliding with 616, you get a lot of nicer, wider spectrum of characters that are introduced into the Marvel universe now.
Yeah.
Like champions and like the X-Men and Iceman. Oh my god. Iceman being one of the more publicly out gay characters now was mind-boggling to me because it's just so weird to think as Bobby being, the womanizer that he was, to bringing a past alternate version of him to the present, and then that character being gay was very, very weird.
And when executed properly, it's great. I mean, I do think of their Champions line, the Champions series that has Kamala Khan, Miles Morales, the younger Cyclops.
Yep.
I read the first couple of issues of that and didn't care for it. Some of the criticism that Marvel's been receiving lately is the fact that they have a diverse cast of characters, and that's never an issue with me. What I do have an issue with is somebody overtly preaching, and the Champions series was nothing more, in my opinion, than an after-school special, just preaching to you, and that just is off-putting. I would rather they should have focused on creating a good story instead of trying to, talk about things in the news, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that is a legitimate complaint to have. But you also have. I'm also hesitant of bringing that up because without being able to clarify it. It could come across as me having the same opinions as the neo-Nazi idiots who.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with comic books. You have a little bit of escape, and you have a little bit of, fun. And then some of them can be more grounded in realism, which can be off-putting or just not always necessary. Or you might not align with the idea of where it's going.
But I think of the Miss Marvel comic period. It's that is telling us an important story, especially with some of the Islamophobia that's going on out there. It's telling an important story by not preaching. It's just, this is Kamala Khan. This is her family. This is what she does throughout the day. This is why she wants to become a hero. And it didn't have if it wasn't Mrs. Wilson writing that comic, I think she's married. She better be if it was just some guy who never met a Muslim in his life, just writing that story, it could come across as really bad. It's just somebody lecturing, Muslims are good people. Of course they are, but just show everyday life. Yeah. Show what it's like for these people, and then you can make your point without having to make the point.
And that's where Spider-Man always hit home for me. Is like you have a kid who's working at a newspaper who's always striving to do better, but like it's New York, man. Like everything's going to hit you. They had a whole issue for 9/11. They had a whole issue for the swine flu that was going around when that was huge. There was a really good series called The Gauntlet with Spider-Man. Oh my god! But like during that whole time, dude, the guy was sick. He's like sick, running around. And then they're lining up villain after villain after villain to not only test him and wear him down, on top of all of that, he's violently ill. So it's just like, you want a little bit of touch and realism. You want a little bit of touch in what's happening now. Yeah. But honestly, the way publishing can be, you might swing and miss because you might be off by a week or a month, who knows? Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned it, the Spider-Man 9/11 issue, definitely a classic. I mean, there's some things wrong with the story, because I think, they had Dr. Doom shedding a tear? Or was that Magneto? That was like the whole Marvel universe, but yeah, it was definitely Dr. Doom. Yeah, and it's hard to have like a villain who's done such villainous things. Yeah, who are just like, oh wow, that's bad. Yeah, how could somebody who or Magneto is helping clear off some of the rubble, which I don't think Magneto would have cared. I think Magneto would have filthy humans, something like that. Yeah, he thinks of Homo sapiens as inferior. So why would he help in terms of fixing that mess? So there are definitely some flaws in that story. It's still a powerful story, of course, but at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, people have to remember that when it comes to at least superhero comics, you are there for escapism. It makes it better when they can take an issue and actually do something positive with it in terms of telling a story. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, with Miss Marvel, she's a young girl who can become big and then get a big giant hand and slap people in the face with it. It's escapist fare, and that's another thing I love about that comic too. I did come up with the artist here, Takeshi Miyazawa and Adrian Alfona are two of the artists listed for the series. What I love about Miss Marvel is that the art and the words meld together as if it comes across as if Kamala Khan is actually drawing the story of her life. Nice. And that, because the art is not perfect, but you could see a 15-year-old girl drawing like that. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of what I like about it. Well, I mean, you talked about escapism. One of the best comics, and it's not even really like superhero related, I ever read was Scott Pilgrim. And I'm not sure if you have any familiarity with it or if you saw the movie. Yeah. I have the series, and I followed the series like halfway through once it started, and I picked it up and went with it. And it was during a phase of my life where not only was I going through a really bad breakup, but I was trying to bounce back from something like that. And then it's like, hey, we're going to be a little ridiculous, but we're also going to talk about feelings and real things. And it was always nice to kind of go to that when I was in a weird spot. Yeah. And sometimes it might not be the subject matter or pop culture or whatever, but having a good story that's relevant can also help in any way. Which has always been awesome. And I mean, that's the wonderful thing about art period, but especially with comic books. I mean, there's one common
theme I see from comic creators on Twitter is that they get really annoyed when someone mentions, I don't like comics, in terms of lumping essentially saying that superhero comics represent all comics.
Yeah.
And you can't think, it would be like thinking, Jay-Z represents every single musician ever. Jay-Z is one facet of the music industry, and there's a lot more out there. Merle Haggard is nothing like Jay-Z, though that would be one hell of a combination.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah, it's so there is something out there for every. Comics and jazz are two art forms that are uniquely American, and comics are you can tell any type of story you want with a comic book.
Yeah,
like a movie that came out last summer, Atomic Blonde, based on a comic book, I believe published by Oni Press.
Yeah.
Someone that we know was going to get me in contact with the writers of that story. Ultimately didn't happen, but now that we got a podcast, maybe I'll follow up with that.
Yeah.
One of our coworkers at the strip club we work at,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a lot out there now. What would you say are some of your favorite characters?
I would say one of my favorite characters is, there's so many like teams and groups that work well together, but one of my favorite things to read about, that's not in like my main like wheelhouse of like people I like, Hank Pym and Mr. Fantastic have like the best banter. I remember reading an issue and, Mr. Fantastic is making a pretty broad assumption about Pym particles, and he's like, "Yo, like this will never work. This is crazy." And Dr. Pym is like, "Hey, I've discovered the Pym particles. I know what they can do. I know what's possible." And then Dr. Reeves is just like, "I know you discovered them. And I credit you as a scientist, but I feel like I know far more about Pym particles than you ever will." And I just remember Dr. Pym just coming back and saying, "You know what? It's on, bitch." Literally in the comic bubbles. And I'm like sitting there, and like if you ever see Dr. Pym or Ant-Man and Mr. Fantastic in a room, they still have this weird, like, hatred for each other. Where it's just, like, two scientists, like, swinging their dicks around, just being like, "No, I'm the smarter scientist." And it is the funniest fucking thing. It is the goddamn funniest fucking thing. You'll see something similar with, like, Captain America and Iron Man. Because it's like, I'm from an old era of, like, long ago, and, like, this is how it is. And then, like, you have Tony, who's the counter opposite future man, being like, robots, lasers, blur, blur, blur. And it's so funny. And then when you talk about, like, villains, too, one of my, like, favorite villains, like, the most obscure villain, is the Spot, if you're familiar with the Spot.
No.
So he's this guy who is in this giant unitard of all white, and all over his body there's all these little black holes, and they are actually black holes to other dimensions that come out wherever the hell he wants, and he can control it.
And it's a Marvel character?
It's a Marvel character. So he was a doctor, and he was this brainy scientist who ended up stealing a bunch of stuff to fund his research for this black hole gun that he made, and then he used it to steal a bunch, and then it like bonded to him. And then after a bunch of nonsense, yeah, man, this is one of the best issues too, because after he comes back, he's a mute, and he's an assassin now. And it just is so funny because you see someone like Spider-Man trying to interact with him and be like quippy and funny, and it's just like, it's not happening. But then he's like, "Okay, I'm going to go to punch you," and then he puts a hole right where his punch is going to land. And then he puts a hole out on his face, and then the fist goes, and Spider-Man punches himself in the face. And it's if you can't touch somebody, it's one of the best things. Like, yeah, in here you have like an image where he's just in a room full of portals, and he's just getting kicked and punched where the sun don't shine.
Yeah, I'm on the Marvel Unlimited app right now, and we're looking at Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man issue number 99, which, yeah, definitely, you have foot, you got, just limbs all over the place, but not in a coherent way.
No,
so.
it's so bonkers too when you have these very obscure characters who are maybe D-list at best, but they could have like cataclysmic meltdowns of like the world if they were to use their powers properly, which is just really, really funny. You see a lot of that with Spider-Man, where he has these like terrible, terrible villains like Sandman. But then if you like give Sandman an island or a beach full of sand, he's unstoppable, which is hilarious.
Yeah. What other characters would you say are your favorites?
Well, I also grew up in the 90s era of like Image was being kind of pushed forward, so you had like Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon was really, really fun. It was a TV show, and then I found the comic book. And then you have much later and much subtle characters like Spawn, who were they were always the thing that people pointed to about why comics were bad, but it was probably one of the best reasons why comics are so good.
Yeah,
because they're very well written, and then the art is amazing, and it's scary, but it's a great story.
And I mean that is why I think Image Comics is so important, because they were, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first big startups that actually started nipping at the heels of DC and Marvel. Because Image started with some of the big names in comics: Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane. Wasn't Jim Lee a part of that?
I believe he was a part of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
but, they were a heavy hitter.
Yeah, they took some of the biggest names in comic creators, brought them all together, and essentially, Image was one of the first big comic companies that allowed the creators of the comics to actually, believe it or not, own the characters they created. So, you know, if you buy a Spawn action figure, Todd McFarlane's getting that money.
Not only that, he was able to develop McFarlane toys.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Like if you see some of the Gene Simmons action figures, you know.
Oh my god!
Yeah, but it was important, because I think one thing that does somewhat get overlooked, but I think, you know, thanks to, you know, there's a new series on AMC, Robert Kirkman's Untold History of Comics, that kind of touches upon it. Companies, and also our interview with Nick, he kind of briefly touched upon it as well. Comic companies don't treat creators with the respect they should. I mean, I think it is an absolute utter shame that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, creators of one of the most iconic characters in comic book history, Spider-Man, died making about as much money as I make now.
Yeah, that it's horrible to think about that too, because you have like characters like Jack Kirby who were essential to not only the comic book industry but characters themselves, and not getting the notoriety or just the reputation that they deserve.
Well, even Jack Kirby though still gets knocked. Like the first episode of the Robert Kirkman show on AMC, they have a little dig at Jack Kirby as a writer, saying he wasn't a very good writer. And this is the guy who created the new gods. He created Darkseid. I mean, someone we're talking about in movies today. Shut up, you know. I mean, there's another movie that's on Hulu, actually called Batman and Bill. It's a documentary about this writer who discovered, because he wrote a book about Siegel and Shuster and wanted to write one about Batman and Bob Kane, but the more he did research, the more he found out that Bob Kane didn't really have as much involvement in the creation of Batman as you would think. It was actually a guy by the name of Bill Finger.
Yeah.
And it detailed, you know, all of, I mean, Bill Finger was the one who created the Joker. He created a whole slew of characters, and thanks to Bob Kane being the most atrocious asshole of all assholes. Basically, the story is Bob Kane and Bill Finger came up with the first issue of Batman, and then Bob Kane goes, yeah, I'm going to go to the comic company and I'm going to get us a great contract. He got himself a great contract.
Yeah.
And similar to Mel Blanc with Looney Tunes, when you see Looney Tunes, this is voice characterizations, Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc is not the only voice actor in the Looney Tunes cartoons.
He created most of them, though.
Most of them, yeah, but you also have people like June Foray, Stan Freberg,
Yes.
amazing voice actors that did not get credit until many years later.
Yeah.
And Bill Finger ended up dying alone, virtually penniless. The fucker created Batman.
Yeah.
And,
that's rough.
But you should definitely check it out. It's on Hulu, Batman and Bill. And Bill Finger's granddaughter, Athena Finger, is actually on Twitter as well. And I was able to have a brief little back and forth with her on that. It's an interesting story, too, because I guess Bill Finger's, during the course of the investigation that the writer did, he discovered that Bill Finger had a son, but then the writer naively, once he found out that Bill Finger's son was gay, he naively thought, oh, that's the end of Bill Finger's lineage, without thinking that, it's possible for a homosexual person to have heterosexual relations every now and then.
Or just adopt a kid.
Yeah, but Bill Finger's son had a biological daughter. Mm-hmm. And Athena Finger, of course. So, it's good that we're finally... And it was great, seeing, Bill Finger's name up on the big screen. It's kind of... I'm happy that writer did what he did. I forgot his name right now, and I'll bring up Twitter. But the fact that, he ultimately got justice for a guy who created a character that embodies justice, that embodies helping the little man, to me, that is very much indicative of what that character has to offer.
I think we're pushing time now, but I think we are reaching a good stopping point once we figure out the name of the individual that we're looking for.
The writer.
Were you having correspondence with them at all?
Mark Tyler Nobleman.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you said that was on Hulu?
It is on Hulu. Batman and Bill. Definitely check it out. But, so, yeah, with that, we'll wrap things up. We'll ask one last question here. What would, if for somebody that wants to get into comic books that says, that wants an intro, what would be the comic book you'd place in their hands?
It depends on what they're looking for. I actually kind of did this when I was cleaning out my comic book collection. I kind of talked to a lot of our coworkers, and I found things that were just more up their alley. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things that I did was I gave Eric Fuentes a lot of my X-Men comics because I felt like that was like easily digestible, but then I also gave him like a nice story arc to follow as well.
Yep.
Usually I like to go with trades, like a nice collection of a comic book. One of my favorites is to just kind of go with a character you're comfortable with, and then from there kind of go into little stories, one-offs, things that are easily digestible, and then finding something that will like push the boundaries or break the gap of like what you're used to. And then by doing that, it usually opens you up to the world that the character's in.
Yeah, because that is one misconception about comics, that like Spider-Man, for example, that you must read the comic from issue 1 on down, and that is not how comics work. Comics are essentially there's a rebirth happening all the time with these characters, and they will like Dan Slott, when he took over Spider-Man, took elements from the previous creators, and then he did his own thing with it. Yeah. And when somebody else takes over for him, they will do the same thing. And
they also have really good recollections. So, like, if a character's in a particular bout against a villain or anything like that, they kind of do a previously, and they'll show, like, the history of that character or what happened, even mentioning the issue or the page where something was brought up. And there was a really nice run of Spider-Man where Harry Osborn got a girl pregnant while he was the Green Goblin. He like still had the Green Goblin ability, and then that baby grew up and is like thing. So there's this whole other like backstory, like from like the late 80s, early 90s,
right?
And then they're like, well, let's just summarize this in like a nice 3-issue run, and they usually tell their own stories, which are great.
And wasn't that Liz Allen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Amazon had a sale recently of some of the Marvel Masterworks, so I bought the first 7 volumes of the Spider-Man thing. It was like $20 for all 7 of them.
Yeah.
And going through some of the early ones where, Petey,
Pete. The other thing, too, is one of the first books that I owned, it wasn't even a comic book, but it was a comic book anthology, and it was just showing you, like, a lot of characters, the history of these characters, and then by finding out more of these characters or obscure characters, I was able to find characters that I liked.
Yep.
One of them that was really, really good was Animal Man. Like, he's always been so obscure. And then when DC had its 52, not reboot.
The new 52?
No, it was the older one. Crisis Across Infinite Earths. That whole story arc, they highlighted one of these characters, Animal Man, and he's adrift in space, about to die, and then he kind of does his little Animal Man power and stretches it as far as he goes, and he finds an animal in the middle of space while he's about to die, and it's this little thing that eats suns, which is really, really funny. And then he was able to teleport himself home because that was the ability of the animal. It had this like wonderful ability to teleport and gain power from the sun.
What a coincidence!
Right. It just when all things seemed their bleakest, it just there's really, really random things. And another really good one is like TV shows and cartoons. Justice League Unlimited is one of the best introductions to such obscure characters. One of them being The Question. I don't know if you're familiar with The Question.
Familiar with it, but
the dude with the blank face. So he has like no face, and he was actually Batman before Batman. He had been around since like the late 1920s, and it at the time had filled that paranoid brain hole of mine where it's like just the weird things like the Kennedy assassination, all these weird stuff. So he was like that kind of like fringe detective,
right? And
one of the things that it made me laugh was aglets on shoes, the little tips of your shoelace,
right?
And it was like aglets are tracer devices that are built into your shoes that people can like track you. And I'm just like sitting there and I'm like, don't do this to me, brain. No. But after I found the character on Justice League Unlimited, it then went into, let me like look more into this character. And there's these like crazy Sherlock Holmes level twists.
Right.
And it was just such a cool character.
Yeah, created by Jesse the Body Ventura. No, with the whole Kennedy.
Yeah.
That joke went well.
I know what you're talking about. You were like referring to his like Fox News interview.
No, he did a TV show, a conspiracy theory TV show.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah.
He was on Fox News and he was like kind of going off on some stuff, but it all made sense, which was really, really funny.
9/11 an inside job. There's no way 2 planes could do that, but the video. No, they could, but the video.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that about wraps up another edition of Friends Talking Nerdy. We all thank you for listening once again. I can't believe we're up to, at the time of the recording here, episode 14 was released.
Nice.
So 14 episodes.
Yeah.
And counting. I mean,
we're doing pretty good.
We're doing good, and I mean, slowly building an audience. We're over 1,100 downloads.
Nice.
So over a 3-month period.
Appreciate you guys. If you do want to get us more in the mainstream, the way the algorithm works for the Apple podcasts, you have to give like a rating, and that pushes us a little bit further up. If you want to give a good rating, we appreciate it. If you want to give us a bad rating, just email Tim directly, and he can he can answer any of your questions.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not busy with your mother. Anyway, so we thank you all for listening. Head to friendstalkingnerdy.com, and we'll see you all next week.
Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Hey, look at that couple. Boy, they sure seem to be in love, huh?
You know, what's with that? That's the second time you've commented on couples in love.
Well, I like that sort of thing. Tell me, do you have a girlfriend, Brody?
Had one. We just broke up. The Thing. Is this dork made of orange rock like the rest of his body?
It's a superhero secret. Tell me, Brody, why did you and your girlfriend break up?
She was a pain in the ass. She wanted me to be this typical boyfriend guy. Said I was too into my own world, comics and all.
Yeah, I can relate. There was a time when it was all about comics for me. You know, I had a girl probably the same as yours. She always complained that I spent too much time with my own comics. And eventually we broke up.
See, what did she know? Here you are now, a legend in the field. Probably had a slew of women since her, am I right?
Oh, lots of women. Jagger and me, we had a running contest to see who had the most. Matter of fact, last time I looked, I was way ahead.
Damn, that's hot!
But I never forgot that girl.
Well, did you ever get back together with her?
One day I found out she got married. I had blown it. I had missed my window.
No way. Well, what'd you do?
I went on with my life. I created some special new superheroes. They were characters that reflected my own heartbreak and my own regrets.
How so?
Dr. Doom wears body armor to conceal his own mangled form, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That was me beneath the armor. The Hulk. A normal guy 1 minute, a rage of emotions the next. Just like me when I thought about what I'd given up.
So you created each character as a way to deal with your one big regret.
Yeah, the girl that got away. Look, do yourself a favor, Brody. Don't wait. Because all the money, all the women, even all the comic books in the world, they can't substitute for that one person.
I don't know, all the comics in the world.
Trust me, true believer. Well, good talking to you.
Keep up all the good work.
You keep reading them. I'll keep writing them.
Hey, Stan.
Yeah.
She really meant that much to you?
Brody, I'd give it all up. All of it. For just one more day with her. Take care.